Forgiveness and accountability. The content for this podcast comes from my book, Advanced Success Secrets. You get a free copy of each of my bestsellers at alexhammerbooks.com. That's AlexHammerbooks.com. It is said that forgiveness is the gift that you give yourself. But is it really? Yes, it is. Although many of us don't believe it. How do I know that? Take one look at the world. For many years, I lived with a heavier footprint. No, not a carbon footprint, but a life footprint. I felt a weight on me, a struggle, a battle in life. It seemed so hard at times even to make ends meet, much less thrive. I didn't realize that life is a battle, but a battle with oneself. When others antagonize us, they're doing us a favor, parentheses within reason. They're teaching us, if we learn the lesson, that we don't need to fight all the time to get what we want in life. In fact, this is precisely the thing that is holding us back. When we don't forgive, we see enemies. Fundamentally, this is because we feel vulnerable in some way. And remember, feelings are powerful in regards to the law of attraction. When we feel vulnerable, we are vulnerable. Maybe not in the deepest sense in which life loves us and, quote, parentheses, I believe but can't prove or know for sure that we are perhaps immortal, but in our life experience. Call it karma, call it the law of attraction, call it what goes around comes around. Or call it frosted flakes if you want to. The principle is the same. When we see enemies, we have enemies. We create them. When we feel vulnerable, we are vulnerable. We create it. This is a little bit of a simplification, but not too much. When considering whether forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, ask yourself this question. What is the result of living in unforgiveness? What is the result of living with a heavy heart? What is the result of living with stress? What is the result of living with feeling that one is vulnerable? You can come up with your own answers, I am sure. They say that you cannot give away something which you already are. That should be a little bit different, note to podcast. It should be that you cannot give away something which you are not already are. Another way of saying that famously is, you must be the change that you seek to see in the world. You are that change. I put it in caps because to my mind, it is that important. It may seem a little hokey, perhaps along the lines of mind over matter, or faith can move mountains, and you may be skeptical because when is the last time that you saw a mountain being moved? But we are creating our realities, at least to some degree, because others are also creating theirs. We have some limitations, some solid limitations in terms of what we may be able to influence in the public space. We each have a sphere of influence, but you do have a major effect on your own life, and to a lesser extent on the lives of others as well. We're not passive agents. We are creators. So this is a great power that we need to learn to harness well. Another famous saying I like is, wherever you go, there you are. To me, that is a gentle reminder to try to be at peace with oneself. I also like the similar reminder saying, grow where you are planted. If you believe in perfect timing and perfect moments, as I do, and even perfect results, perhaps a little more bold on that one, then you know, as is famously said, that God doesn't make mistakes. Or, as Einstein said, God doesn't play dice for the universe. If we are where we should be learning, or at least with the opportunity to learn what we should learn, then why does it all seem so difficult? Glad you asked. And it's a question we all asked. I've asked it many times. The best answer to that question that I've been able to come up with is that, to a certain measure, life is often as easy or difficult as we make it. There are certain objective things in the world. This does include plenty of challenges, to be sure. But when we struggle against them, when we fear them, when we hate them, then things can reach a point of seeming almost unmanageable. I said earlier that I believe that as human beings we can generally, for the most part at least, be about as happy or unhappy as we make up our minds to be. It's a choice. It seems more difficult because we have put a lot of conditions on life, because we have put a lot of conditions on ourselves. It will not surprise you to hear, following from this logic, that it's difficult for us to forgive others because it is difficult for us to forgive ourselves. Remember, the outer world is an expression or mirror of the inner, and it is, as noted, impossible to give away something which we do not already have. Imagine if we were at peace with ourselves. How would we relate to others if we didn't feel that we needed something from them? I'm not saying that this is the ideal state or even possible. I'm just asking the question. Love comes from a place of fullness. Unforgiveness, including grudges and bad feelings, comes from a place of vulnerability or lack. But I also wish to take a look at the other side, or another side at least, because I'm not advocating that we should always be forgiving angels 100%. Remember when we recently discussed managing up and down? Accountability, the flip side of forgiveness, is involved in this process. When we manage up or down, or sideways, we are utilizing accountability. Our notion of accountability, anyways. We may call it fairness. Justice is a notion of accountability, expressed in its, I believe, watered down but still valuable rubric of laws, entitled the criminal justice system, justice in capital letters. Laws do not always have justice, but that is the ideal. That is what we are after, or should be after. Accountability is good because it is a learning tool. If we did something wrong and we were not corrected, how would we know not to do that wrong thing again? We can learn from our own experience and also through the experience of others. Observational learning. Sometimes we don't forgive because we are focused on accountability and fairness, but sometimes we don't forgive because we are just petty, or jealous, or small. How can we separate out the two? Discernment. In the Laws and Secrets of Success, the next to the final chapter was entitled, The Wisdom to Know the Difference. Discernment is this ability, along with character, which plays a big role. Sometimes accountability is accountability, and sometimes it is unforgiveness. This is not so much an objective evaluation, of course, as much as it is often dependent upon the players at play, in their motivations, needs, and drives, etc. But we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves regardless. Who among us hasn't engaged in a bit of unforgiveness at times? Sometimes with a nice bit of accountability thrown in for good measure. Perhaps this is why the Bible reminds us, judge not lest you be judged. We need to make judgments in our lives, of course, but perhaps this is very different than being judgmental. But perhaps judgments lead to accountability, but judgmentalness, if that is a word, leads to unforgiveness. Sounds good to me. Discernment is critical to character. If we can't differentiate between when we are practicing accountability and when we are practicing unforgiveness, then this is a stumbling block for us. Our feelings could be a guide. At some level, it feels good when we work to make the world in some way more fair as we define it. This is an important and critical part of life. But it feels bad when we seek to punish someone, for example, to try to make them feel bad out of our own weaknesses. Although it may be tempting to try, we can't really feel better at another's expense. We're all related, and the energy of life is like a boomerang. What we put out is what we ultimately receive. Forgiveness is, in capital letters, on is, the gift you give yourself. If you're smart and successful, you will have already realized that by now.